Let's come to order. Welcome to our November work session. Questions on the agenda?
As we go down through this, a couple of little things that I'll end up adding to the agenda, but probably do it in your general board comments. We had a banner at the TSBA convention this weekend, and I've got that banner, and by Thursday it'll probably be up here behind us so we can recognize those students that did the banner and everything. So I'd like to add that to the agenda, but it doesn't have to be a big formal thing, just to give them due recognition.
Okay. Sounds good. Other questions on the agenda? How about the consent agenda? All right, that takes us to number 7. Want to do that tomorrow, Mr. Gill?
Yes, sir.
Number 8, tomorrow also. Number 9. Let's see, resolution on school vouchers. You should have that at your desk. This is based on, I've forgotten which county now, but another county that had sent this.
I can tell you.
Pardon?
Knox County.
Knox County?
Yeah.
So if you take a look at this by Thursday, obviously we can have any discussion we want tonight and or Thursday night.
Maybe we could, since several of us attended the conference over the weekend in Nashville, that maybe we could talk about that one and some of the other ones that the delegate assembly passed. And, just a few minutes to remind everybody what occurred.
Do you want to do that now or?
If you want to, we'll just wait until,
Doesn't matter to me.
we'll just do it at the end if that's all right.
Okay. B, Director of Schools Evaluation. You've all been mailed by Ms. Michaels 2 or 3 evaluations. So here's what I'm thinking, and you all tell me if you like the idea or if you don't.
We'll pass them
What I would like to see happen is on Thursday that we decide what evaluation form that we use. And then we pretty quickly move into actually doing the evaluation over the next, I don't know, say by the end of the month. That would give you nearly 2 weeks, I guess, to complete your evaluation. And then we would make a decision about Mr. Gill's contract at our, and Joyce, what are the dates? Is it the 15th or something like that?
14th, November 14th.
December 14th is our,
I'm sorry. December 14th.
okay. Now, in order to do that, we have to go ahead and and it's not a problem, but we have to go ahead and post online that that's going to be on the agenda by state law, that we have to give, I think, 15 days notice. So what do y'all think about that plan? Sounds good.
Discussion this evening about the evaluation, different ones.
Yes, please.
In addition to the ones that Ms. Michaels sent out this weekend, there were at the TSBA conference, there was a breakout session on director evaluations. Oak Ridge Schools shared theirs. One of the key elements that they incorporated was they took the same number schedule that is a little bit controversial with the teacher evaluations and said, let's use that in the superintendent as well. To use that with the director of schools helps everyone maybe to understand or embrace that 3 is an acceptable performance, 4 is exemplary, and 5 is beyond that, and then the 2 and 1 likewise. But they took that same model and put it in there. I thought it was, something worth noting as we talk about, evaluations for the teachers and evaluations, self-evaluation for the school board, evaluation for the director. If we're on a similar playing field, then there's some equivalency across there.
Of course, the form that we used several times prior to last year is a 1 through 5 scale.
Yeah.
Terry?
I think the one you're talking about there, I think that incorporates, what some people want to do is this 1 through 5 plus you've got a line there, if you want to expand on it like we did last year. So, I'm comfortable using what we did use before. If you got comments, put them around.
Okay. Other thoughts? Wayne?
I think the numbered system is a lot easier. I thought the narrative took quite a bit more thought and time, but I'll do what the board desires. But I think just circling a number and giving a brief comment probably much easier. So, but I think I said enough about it last year.
Well, we discussed this endlessly last year. It seemed like, not that I'm averse to discussing it endlessly again. I think the thing with the numbers, yeah, it's easier to say superintendent winds up with an average of whatever, 4.23. How that's more meaningful than a written statement, I'm not quite sure. To me, it implies a greater degree of specificity than is really there. But I don't feel strongly about it, and like Wayne, I'll go along, obviously, with the issues of the board. Tim?
I think the public seems to feel more comfortable seeing numbers, feel like they can understand it better. I personally think the narrative is more meaningful to me. I think it would be more meaningful to me being evaluated that way, that I can take something and really look at that meat as opposed to a number. A number is a number, okay? So I'm a 4. My goal is to go to a 5. How do I do that?
Right.
I think that's what the narrative says. The narrative says this is what's good, and this is why it's good, this is what's not so good, and this is why it's not so good, and it gives me, it would give me, as an instructor, as a principal, as whatever, something that means more. I just believe that what we did last year, if I was being evaluated, I think it would just give me something more to hang my hat on. But I do believe the public has a hard time grasping that, and we do need to be somewhat beholden to that. So I think we at least got to think about that.
I'm not sure I heard from any member of the public. Editorial team at the News Journal was very much in favor of the numerical
Let me rephrase that. The editorial team.
I don't recall getting any emails regarding the evaluation either, but
Perhaps
I agree
they have
with
their
Mr.
finger on the
Tackett.
pulse of the public more so than we do. I don't know.
Yeah. Well said.
A couple other things that were discussed and are just worth considering. The idea of some real tangible goals being tied to the evaluation. And one of the things I asked Ms. Joyce to send out to us were the results of our strategic planning retreat, where we were able to identify some goals. And we can specifically go back to that and see that those were or were not addressed. In that respect, we have some absolute characterizations that say this year this occurred, and they talked about evaluation score inflation or something like that. There is that perception, and I think we've seen it in the teachers as they've looked at the new evaluation model that they're now under. They expect to get a 4 or a 5 or something like that. Whereas when the scale changes and they say a 3 is a good solid teacher, that's a good solid teacher. And if you're a 3.5 or something like that, you're better than the average. You're a really good teacher. If that is the standard that the state is looking at, then as they explained it in the little breakout session, if you go off of a 3, you can circle a 3 and just lay it out there and say, yeah, you met the performance. But if you do a 4, you better have some information to back it up. Likewise, if you do a 2, you better have some information to back it up. There's this expectation that you don't just circle a 4 or a 5 without some narrative, if you will, that explains why it is that there was really excellent performance. I think that there's some merit to that. The other thing is that some real tangible goals. Oak Ridge went so far as to say, we're looking for a 90% graduation rate, or something like that, system-wide. And, of course, if you got a 93% graduation rate, well, that's pretty easy. 90%'s a 3, 93%'s a 4 maybe, or something like that, and you can just score it right out. I mean, so there's some things that our teachers are facing that are absolutely tied to test data, and perhaps it's appropriate in the evaluation of the director as well.
I think you're right. I think that's more for an evaluation a year from now rather than this evaluation. I think you have to start at the beginning, and I appreciate you raising this, Aaron. I mean, I know that the TSBA document that Joyce sent is very much, it's not something we could adopt and do this month. It's something we could adopt and start the planning and with an eye to doing it a year from now. And so it's a related question, but to me it's sort of separate. We got to get through this evaluation. What form do we want to use this month? And then the next question would be how, if at all, do we want to change the process for next year? If you want to do a goal-oriented one, I think you got to set the goals at the beginning of the evaluation period, don't you?
I do, and I think that we did set some of those goals, and it's worth us incorporating the results of the February 2011 board retreat into the terminology, and not just, making a duplicate copy even of what we did in 08, 09 or something like that, but incorporating some language that ties to what came out of that board retreat that said, we'd like some attention on this. If we don't do that, then our emphasis is without evaluation.
How do you propose to do that? Who's going to write the questions?
Is that a request?
No, I'm just curious. I mean, if we're thinking of doing this starting Thursday,
Yeah.
time is short.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
and I don't remember what board members were involved in the developing of the TSIP program that was for the book that was, but maybe it's time that we have a refresher course with that plan, because most of our goals as a board have always been tied to the TSIP, and it may be time to review that and
One of the things that came back over and over this weekend was just how measurable the educational system is becoming and what we're facing, and how often we hear from Mr. Odom, about how we track and how we relate and everything like that, and for school board members to embrace that and do more of that.
Well,
Just
for-
give-
No,
I'm
go
just saying,
ahead.
given the amount of complaining that we've all done about the new evaluation system of teachers, it just seems odd that we're now going to use that as the model for our evaluation of the superintendent.
And yet, when we complain about it, we do have to acknowledge that we're, in many cases, maybe some cases, maybe somebody can speak to this even more educated than I am, that we do see an impact on the classroom and maybe some improvement being forced by the evaluation. Not comfortable, not easy. It's hard to work out, but you get stronger.
I'm still looking for something that we can vote on Thursday.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not ready to do it. My thinking was, we have the practical matter of Mr. Gill's contract, which I think we need to solve before Christmas. I mean, either he needs to know, he needs to know his future one way or the other, and we need to know also. And that's my concern. I mean, so I'm not really disagreeing with anything you've said, Aaron. I'm trying to keep us focused on step number one. So I'm not at all objecting to the idea that we should keep in mind those goals that we established at our meeting while we fill this out. Now, if there's some way, what I'm struggling with is how you propose to incorporate them into this or some other document.
I think if there's sentiment among the board that those goals are worthy to be evaluated, then, yeah, you can expect that I would bring an amendment to terminology we'll have to look at Thursday, but it would be directly related to the February 12th, 2011 goals that we set. And we won't be able to be super specific. It'll be a broad, evaluation effort on that, because we didn't set really specific goals. But if we don't evaluate those goals, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah, and I just wonder how measurable they are. I'm searching for that. Joyce, is that something you've sent out?
Sent it
And
with your packet.
probably I misplaced that. Do they appear to be measurable in some way?
I think they're at least as measurable as, treats all personnel honestly, fairly, and without favoritism.
Which is to say, not very measurable.
Exactly. So, do we need to do a better job of setting goals and maybe work on the whole evaluation model? Yeah, probably
Yes,
so,
we do.
but we need to take a step in that direction.
Thank you, Joyce.
I continue to agree with Chairman Burns' comment that we've got to get through this one. And then, as far as, the future goals, that'll take care of itself. But we're fortunate in that we've had time after time presentations made to this board reminding the successes and improvements that continue throughout this system. So it's not like we're, that we don't know that all the good things that are occurring under Mr. Gill's leadership. So I would like for us to get through this and move on, and then start the goal process if we want to add some specific goals at that time.
Tim, while I'm thinking of it, let me say this. I got a call from Patrick McCarthy. Remember the guy who moderated our retreat in February? He said his organization would also be eager to help us do this. They have a guy who on board there who does evaluations, and he also, and I said, well, that wouldn't be for this time, it would be for a year from now. And he said, yes, very much, that it's the same idea of setting goals that can be measured and then doing that sort of over the course of a year. So that's something to think about once we get through this one. Tim?
The Oak Ridge model that's in front of us is, if I count through that in a brief kind of a way, there's about 120 different items to put a 1 through 5. I can't imagine having any possible amount of expertise to be 1 through 5 on any type of detail like that. I think it's one of the criticisms of the teacher evaluation plan that evaluators got 37 or whatever that number happens to be, check marks that you've got to go through. It's a bunch to be able to do that in that brief period of time. It's not that we don't want to do the evaluation. I just can't possibly see that I or anybody else could have enough knowledge to get down to the minutia that this thing tries to get to.
Just as an explanation, because I went to that explanation of this model. Number one, they developed the evaluation with the director's full input, and so he was there to help set those goals and put those in place. So they certainly had an obtainability built in. And then another portion of this evaluation model is that the director does a self-evaluation similar to what the board does. And in large part, that self-evaluation informs the board about the minutia, if you will, that board members may not be privy to. I mean, we may not be as knowledgeable as Mr. Odom in finding where those test data scores are and how we came out and ranked. But it does put some equivalency in the high standard of measurability that is there in the classroom these days, and it brings it also to the director's office as well.
Boy.
At this point, concurring with Mr. Tackett's comments, Thursday I'll probably make a motion that we go back to the point system prior to the narrative. That way we'll still have the narrative opportunity and have the point system that either the media or the public demands. So that will be my That will be my motion on Thursday, just to,
You're talking about the one that says used in 2006, 7, and 8, right?
yes, sir, yes, sir.
And Tim, you mentioned the Oak Ridge model. I'm getting buried in paperwork here. That's different than this, right?
Yeah,
And that's, yeah,
Mm.
okay. Oh, goodness.
It's arduous.
And I haven't had, obviously, time to look through it. I'm just suggesting that to be able to go in detail
Right,
on 120 different particular items,
right.
I just think we'd probably be making some very educated guess on a large portion of that, based upon the fact the test scores are this, therefore, these things must have happened. But for me to know that this, in fact, did occur to cause the end result to be good or bad, I don't know that I can make that judgment.
I agree. Other discussion? So that will be our plan then. Thursday, we'll make a decision on that. If anybody has any way in which they want to alter or amend that, we'll consider that. But our goal will be to adopt the evaluation for this year on Thursday, complete it by the end of the month, and at our December meeting, make some decision about the director's contract. Everybody good with that plan? Okay. Number 10.
Thursday night, Mr. Clardy will give the board an update on Stewart's Creek High School, Homer Pittard Campus School, and also Eagleville Phase 2, which will be starting soon. 11,
Yeah.
school approval compliance report. The Tennessee State Department of Education requires school systems to submit an annual school approval report indicating compliance with state rules and regulations and detailed plans to rectify any deficiencies. Instructional staff and principals have reviewed the requirements and determined that Rutherford County schools are in full compliance.
Okay, discussion? 12.
Blackman Elementary School walking track. Principal Cynthia Ford requested permission to construct a walking track at Blackman Elementary School. The track will be 200 meters long, constructed of previous pervious concrete by the MTSU students in the construction engineering program and coordinated by Ms. Stitzel, coordinated school health. She's out here now. It will be located at the corner of Blaze Drive and Fortress Boulevard on school property. Funds for the project are coming from a grant procured by Ms. Stitzel and the Blackman Elementary School PTO at no cost to the board, and recommend that you approve 200-meter pervious concrete walking track at Blackman Elementary School at no cost to the board.
Discussion.
What
I
is,
assume that this has been looked at by some of our staff to see that it wouldn't infringe into any areas that we have possible expansion or something of that nature.
It has, we worked closely with Ms. Stitzel and her group, and where she's in compliance with everything looks good, we support it 100%.
what is pervious concrete?
Water will move through it, so you don't have to build up stormwater runoff on top of the track. There's a lot of development taking place at MTSU in their concrete program. The students will be putting that in on the track.
In the photo that we've been given, it looks like that the track could have a little bit wider layout than it does. Has any consideration been made for soccer ability on the infield of this track or anything? Is there a potential there to be able to use this infield by sizing that track, width or length appropriate?
We haven't really looked at that because it's, we basically looked at it as a standpoint of a walking track. We have a large area right next to the school that's several acres that we have room for all of that. And we wanted to get the 600 meters in down in that one particular area, so we stretched it out to try to conserve as much room outside
we happen to be, 5 feet off from a regulation or a pee-wee soccer field or something like that on the infield, we might consider that.
I'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Other discussion? B,
Thurman Francis Arts Academy batting cage, Dr. Helton, principal at Thurman Francis, is requested permission to construct a batting cage at Thurman Francis Arts Academy directly behind the back fence. Rutherford County School Maintenance Department will install the frame and the school will supply the net. Dimensions are approximately 55 by 12, and we will recommend that you approve that.
discussion. 13,
Education Jobs Fund Amendment. The cafeteria fund will receive $153,018 of the system's $4,124,329.87 in the 2011-2012 Education Jobs Fund. August and September are the months we are using these funds. Cafeteria fund did not pay enough full-time staff in those months to cover the retirement in the original budget. This amendment reduces retirement by $12,857 and increases cafeteria worker pay, Social Security, Medicare by that $12,857. Recommend that you will recommend that.
okay. Questions or discussion? B,
I did, just a quick note,
Sure.
I had a few correspondence this week. Teachers, a matter of fact, everybody in the system will get their 1.4% bonus this week, and had several people thank all of us, which was nice. And then there were a few people want to know why they didn't get more when other counties had, and I reminded them what we'd done was gave them a 1.6% raise in addition to the 1.4% bonus. So in retrospect, they did get a 3% raise for this year. Of course, the 1.6 is a recurring raise, and want to make sure that was understood.
Jeff wanted to say something. Jeff?
Last year, we did the 2% bonus from
Yeah.
those funds, so that's why we
Yeah,
don't have so much
yeah,
left
yeah.
as other systems.
Appreciate you reminding me of that, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay.
2, Race to the Top Amendment. This amendment adds $29,600 in revenue and expenditures to the Compass Learning Project in the second year Race to the Top budget and cleans up budgeted expenditures between line items and other projects in light of year-to-date actual expenditures. The $29,600 will cover an open purchase order to Compass Learning from the first year that the state has liquidated at June 30, 2011. After this amendment, the second year Race to the Top budget will be $914,005.61, and we're going to recommend that you approve that.
Okay, discussion. Aaron?
The only thing that comes to mind is, again, this weekend at the TSBA convention, a lot of informal discussion was about Race to the Top funds, ERA funds, a number of different programs that have given some additional funding to education, all kind of coming to an end. And that we've been successful in Rutherford County of, giving taxpayers, county commission, giving them plenty of notice when we see something on the horizon. And I think it's worth noting as we talk about Race to the Top funds here, that a number of these things that we've used to kind of fill in the gaps on the budget are coming to an end, and how we fund things going forward make it creative.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that, we did our homework with respect to employing folks that, knowing that money would dry up, and we used it in such a way that once it did dry up, that we could manage. So we didn't dedicate a lot of salaries to the ERA funds or the Race to the Top money.
Other discussion? 14,
Tenure recommendation. Tenure with Rutherford County School System is awarded to certified teachers who met the following criteria prior to changes in the tenure law. And that law was have a degree from an approved 4-year college or to any vocational teacher who has the equivalent amount of training established and licensed by the State Board of Education, holds a valid professional license based on training covering the subjects or grades taught, has completed a probationary period of 3 school years or not less than 27 months within the last 5-year period. The last to be employed as a regular teacher is reemployed by the Board of Education for service after the probationary period. And just a quick, and Angel may need to help me, but a quick summary with respect to what's taking place here. There were 6 or 7 teachers that were non-renewed last year that were renewed this year. And according to the state, they would come under the umbrella that we used prior to this year for accessing tenure. So they became tenured the first day that they were reemployed by the district. The way the new law reads, it takes 5 years to get tenure. So, we're just, in this particular case, just staying in compliance with what state requires.
So these were folks who voluntarily left their teaching position, or?
No, actually, they were non-renewed by a principal, and
Somebody
another
else
principal
hired them?
picked them up.
Okay.
And this really is fair. If it comes down to it, it's fair.
I agree.
Discussion on that?
Well, I think that clears it up for me. That's an awful short list of tenured
Yes.
teachers. I'm sure the list is hundreds that were tenured at the end
Yeah,
of the third
absolutely.
year at some point in time. So I knew we had to have more tenured teachers than that.
Okay, next is our annual policy manual review. Remember that this is part of the Board of Distinction process, plus it's just good business for us to review our policy periodically. This first section is particularly important, given that it deals with our operations as the school board, so I would ask you and encourage you to review those policies and come forward if you have any discussion items or problems or suggested changes. And we'll be doing this on a monthly basis, but please take the time to take a look at that. We have a policy meeting coming up November 30th, at which we can discuss some of this stuff.
Along those lines, I gave everybody the handout that we got at the TSBA convention this weekend about social media. It really doesn't have anything to do with policy section 1, but I've asked that social media be something that we discuss in that November 30th policy meeting. I just do not have a real solid direction as to what I think we should do with social media, but we really do need to think about it and wrestle with it. Maybe things that we don't participate in, but they are so much a part of society and what is going on that for us to ignore them is irresponsible as well.
Do we not have a policy in electronic? We have a social media sort of, or at least a computer internet use policy.
I
don't
think
know
we
if that-
do.
Yeah, that's the one I'm sort of looking at, Angel.
We have an internet use policy, but we don't have a policy pertaining to, what I have on the agenda for the policy committee meeting is discussion about policy related to employees' personal use of social media and how that relates to their job, so to speak. We don't have a policy that relates to how we as a system use or do not use social media, which I think is the direction that Mr. Holliday is going.
Not only that, but there are schools, and both extremes exist. There are schools that are saying, maybe take a couple of computers out of the classroom because there's so much screen time and we're fostering an attention span that is getting smaller and smaller and smaller with the students. And there are systems that are moving in that direction. Likewise, there are systems that are completely embracing cell phones for homework assignments and for responses in class. Text me the answer, and everybody texts the teacher the answer sitting right there in class. I don't think either one of those extremes is what we ought to do, but we need to intentionally do whatever we are doing. Cell phones, social media, there are more than 100 unofficial Facebook sites of student organizations and organizations in our schools that are out there that are communicating via Facebook, and yet we as a system are kind of holding that at bay and saying we don't allow Facebook, in our internet policy, or something like that. We're blocking that. We just need to intentionally take a look at it. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen with it, but I've been trying to read up on it and get ready for it. We had Twitter, I was telling Ms. Joyce about this, we had Twitter feeds through the entire convention. Governor Haslam was up on stage speaking, and to the left and right there were screens, and people in the conference were tweeting their responses to what the governor was saying on stage. And there it was, a minute and a half after he said it, I agree with the governor. Boom, right there on the stage for everybody to see. That's some dynamic feedback. And if it's out there at that level, we at least need to examine the issue.
Maybe the board members need to tweet as Harry speaks.
That'd be good.
We'll build that into our evaluation process. I think you're right, Aaron, and so we can start having that discussion on the 30th. Okay, that takes us to general discussion. Wayne?
Of course, we've already talked about attending the TSBA conference this weekend. There were 10 resolutions presented to the delegate assembly that we voted on. Actually, 9 were actually resolutions that we'll take to the General Assembly. The 2 most prominent are one that keeps raising its ugly head each year is the appointed versus elected director of schools / superintendent. And the one that really has caused some concern throughout the TSB membership is the voucher initiative, and talk about something that could just completely destroy the public school system. Making public dollars available to private schools is how it's even being considered is beyond me. But it's an issue that I think all school board members had better stay in touch with our legislative delegation, because this one does not need to slip through the cracks. And having a director of school or a superintendent elected for popularity rather than qualifications, again, is beyond logic to me. But Aaron had these copied, so all 10 resolutions are here for you to look at. So I think they're pretty well self-explanatory. The other thing that occurred is that the TLN Board of Directors, of which I'm a member, or was a member for the last 2 years, the TSBA Board and the TLN Board has decided to dissolve the TLN Board and now make it an actual committee. The problem was that having the Board of Directors spread across the state and getting them to TSBA, we were having difficulty having a quorum. I'm only 15 to 20 miles away, so it was an easy process for me. But we're still going to have the TLN, FRM membership from each board. We're just not going to it was more of a redundancy to have the TSBA board, executive board, plus the TLN board. So we're still going to have a committee. Still going to, Lee Harrell is going to contact us directly to stay in touch with our boards. But it looks like a significant move, but it's not. The communication has always been there, and that will not change.
Okay, thank you for that one.
Since we last met as a board, there's been some conversation in my backyard about the school board zones and how they align and such. I understand that there may be continued discussion of that over at the county commission, and I just wanted to make sure that I was able to express to the board here how much I enjoy the cohesiveness that we have on this board. We are not a board that is ruled by self-interest or specific interest for one school. We're a board made up of people that are interested in the welfare and the well-being of every student, no matter where they happen to reside in the county. And once elected by our friends and neighbors that are maybe close by where we live, we absolutely take ownership of every student and teacher and support person in the county that we're here to try and set the vision for. And so I don't want to lose that, as there might be some conversation or discussion as to who's representing who. We do a great job of representing everybody, and I wanted to make sure that I made that known.
I appreciate you saying that, Aaron. I agree that in a lot of the discussion that I read in the newspaper about those unhappy with the zones, the implication was that we should vote according to the needs only of our district rather than the county. And I think we have over the years I've been on anyway. Try to avoid that. And so.
Well,
appreciate you
literally, the redistricting is under the purview of the county commission. You know, we really, other than having an opinion, you know, we really don't figure into that equation because that's their purview. But that's well said, Aaron, so thank you.
I know how you feel. Have opinions and don't get the vote.
Well, you can run. Election's coming up next year.
Oh, man.
Other discussion? Tim?
I want to echo that. I was asked the same question, and if people in Zone 7 are electing me to strictly represent Zone 7, they need to elect somebody else. I'm going to represent the entire group. At the same time, I know it's nice to have someone in your zone that you can specifically call rather than call all 7. And I think that's appropriate, and appreciate the feedbacks that I've gotten on some things. I want to take this just moment to honor one of my heroes in education who passed away recently, Miss Carolyn Reeves, who was a teacher at Oakland High School, at Central Middle School prior to that, I'm not sure where to prior to that, but Carolyn was one of those people I didn't need a 37 checklist document to know that she was a great teacher. She cared about kids. She knew her subject area very well. She could come in and state an opinion in the principal's office and then accept it and walk out even if she didn't agree with it and do whatever. More times than not, she was able to change her mind and make you like it. And it was just she was just a wonderful person outside of being an outstanding teacher. Her funeral was this past Wednesday. I was honored to be able to attend that, and I just wanted to kind of set that up as one of those wonderful people, but we've got tons of them, and I think we just need to keep in mind that we have so many outstanding teachers, and I think that's the part of the evaluation process that I've heard so much from people that I have sought out and I've heard from and so forth, that some of what we're doing is taking, and I understand work is not supposed to be fun, but I think what is happening to some degrees, we're taking the fun out of what these people do and taking the ability for them to go in and be themselves. They feel they're being turned into robots to some degree. And I think that's the unfortunate about an evaluation system that can go too far, which is where I think we are right now. But again, I just want to point that out. Ms. Reeves, you're one of the best.
Thank you, Tim.
And commend Mr. Tackett for his interview in the Times. So,
New York Times, paper of record.
I think he may be is he the first Rutherford County School Board member that's ever been interviewed by the New York Times?
I've been there twice.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, Tim. Other discussion? So you have some homework to do between tomorrow or between tonight and Thursday, so make sure you think more about it, the evaluation, try to read over those policies, and in particular read the resolution we have on vouchers as we'll be voting. With that said, we will adjourn and see you Thursday night.